right, so good morning, everyone. I think it's always good to get a little a warm-up and to also understand in terms of, why this topic of smarter buildings is potentially relevant to the audience. So if I could maybe just have a quick hands up for those of you in here who actually today already live in a smarter home, that would help me. Okay, so that's not bad. I would say that's 35%. Fantastic. And the second question I would have is, who of you works in a smarter building? I would say that's also 35%, but not necessarily the same 35%, which is an interesting topic which I will get back to in a second. So, creating smarter future of homes, buildings, and mobility is the topic of my presentation. And before I get started with that, I would like to talk about 4 megatrends that are really relevant for the future of buildings, for the future of homes, and also for the future of mobility. So first of all, if you look at urbanization, the expectation is that 70% of the world's population will actually live in cities by 2050. And that will have a tremendous impact also in terms of how these cities are being built and how the buildings within these cities are going to look like. Digitalization, it's expected that by 2020, 33 billion devices will be internet connected. Why is that relevant? Because clearly the more you will have an interconnection of devices, the cheaper that technology will become, the cost of communication will come down dramatically, and with that many future applications, not just in the buildings by the way, but in life I would say, become applicable and possible because they also become economically affordable. And then on the energy side, we have really big challenges with the increasing of flexible supply and on flexible demand. On the flexible supply side, clearly the uptake of renewables is tremendous. It's going even faster now. In the last decade, we have seen a huge uptake, and we will expect that, for example, by 2025, more than 150 gigawatts of electricity will be generated in the solar market. And then, more recently, the integration of flexible demand. Demand will become much less predictable. We expect that by 2040, more than 50% of all cars will be electric. And of course, that has a tremendous challenge and means a tremendous challenge on the way the energy gets distributed and also in the way the energy can be used specifically in buildings, in homes, but as I said before, also on mobility. So within ABB, we're therefore taking a very holistic view on the matter of smarter homes when it comes to single and multifamily buildings, multifamily houses, on smarter buildings when it comes to offices, to hospitals, to infrastructure projects, and then last but not least also on the topic of mobility, where we're looking at car charging solutions and bus charging solutions that can be combined with homes and with buildings in the future. So let me take you to some of the current possibilities with smart homes. So things that basically are available today as we speak in a smarter home before I then talk later on a bit about the future possibilities. So 2 of the most important drivers today for smarter homes are in the area of comfort and security. Clearly within comfort, you would have today, if you have a smarter home, you would usually have the possibility to switch your lights, to switch your blinds, to also have some kind of heating attached to the smarter home possibilities. And on the security side, the availability of cheaper cameras will help to actually increase the sense of security in the home. Door entry systems will provide you with access control of who is entering that home and at what time. And these opportunities are already present in many houses today. In addition to that, I would say that energy efficiency plays a role today in homes already, but probably increasingly so in the future. The opportunity to control your devices from remotely is becoming more and more important. And then last but not least, I think we've seen many consumer goods around, for example, Alexa and Amazon, from Amazon, Apple, Philips Hue, just to name a few that are being integrated in a home and that will be integrated also, of course, then with the home automation that's available in those smarter homes. I think it's important to get the maximum benefit out of all of this, that you apply home automation systems that combine many of these different use cases that I've just mentioned into one holistic system that can be IP-based, that can be based on certain standards, like you see some of them here on the slides. But it's important to connect those devices and to connect those systems to one larger home automation system going forward. Now let me move from smarter homes to smarter buildings. And again, I'll talk about what is probably possible in many larger commercial buildings today already. The biggest two use cases that we see for smarter buildings today are energy efficiency and also security. So on the energy efficiency side, clearly, when we talk about the HVAC control and load management, that's a big use case for especially larger commercial buildings today. But again, with the cost of communication coming down, our expectation is that it's not going to be only the large commercial buildings in the future that will have those systems implemented, but also be the mid-sized buildings as well. Security plays an important role here too. This is not just about the security to enter a building. It's also about the security to enter specific floors in a building or specific offices in a building. Clearly, there's huge opportunities. And last but not least, we will see a convergence of building automation systems and emergency lighting systems that will be combined in order to even provide a further possibility for security in those commercial buildings. Other use cases in commercial buildings are, of course, also relevant, such as comfort or lighting, such as lighting or to navigate the blinds according to how the building's being used at certain times of the day. And similar to what I said for the home, clearly in a smarter building, commercial building, it's important also to have international standards applied when it comes to your systems, that you can put different parts, maybe even from different providers, into one holistic solution. And therefore, at least at ABB, we're relying very much on either KNX-based solutions or IP-based solutions going forward. So now let's move from the current possibilities to what we think is possible in the future. Clearly, future opportunities in houses will very much also look at the energy efficiency. And what you see here on the picture behind me is clearly a view that we have, that there is a renewable integration possible. For example, solar PV, maybe even wind generation, but in most cases will be solar, combined with energy storage solutions which become much more affordable. If you look at the prices of batteries coming down, it's tremendous. And it's a huge opportunity to actually get to a way of having a house that can basically generate the electricity, store the electricity, and then use the electricity whenever it's needed. Specific home solutions look at smarter home solutions, then look at predictability of the usage of the house. For example, the weather forecast will tell you a lot about what the temperature in the house needs to look like over the next coming days and how that can be adjusted. The usage pattern of people in the home in terms of when they come, when they leave to work, when they go to school, I think will again have a big impact in terms of how the home can be configured going forward. And last but not least, as I said, with the uptake of electric vehicles, there will also be an important part to really have the management of that electric vehicle seamlessly integrated into the overall energy management system of the house. Clearly, a big opportunity here to come to utilize self-consumption as much as possible within the degree of the electricity that gets actually generated and stored within the building. But there are also further opportunities here when we look at the smarter homes. And from our perspective, artificial intelligence and also face recognition will become major use cases for smarter homes in the future. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow, but certainly we see here a big opportunity in the future. What is the opportunity? Clearly, with artificial intelligence, but also in combination with face recognition, the personalization of a house becomes really relevant. So understanding the home, understanding who is actually entering the house at what time, what are the certain habits, what are the things that the person that lives in that home would like to have in terms of lighting, in terms of heating, maybe in terms of music, can be very tailor-made and there's multiple use cases all the way up to elderly care that you could imagine that can be driven by face recognition, but also in combination then with artificial intelligence to actually make sure that your building not only reacts to the preferences of the person that live and work in that building, but also learns as a building going forward in order to actually have the settings available that will suit all family members best in the future. So now let's take a look at what that actually means for commercial buildings. Again, with the, you see a similar picture here, but the emphasis might be slightly different. As you know, the regulatory drive towards energy efficiency is impacting the building industry quite a lot, and therefore for new constructions and also for retrofit constructions, it becomes more and more important to actually have an energy efficient building. And therefore, energy production, whether it's wind or solar, is an important part that can be added and will be added to buildings in the future. Battery solutions similar to the home, but of course larger, will be an important factor. But then, with the uptake of EV charging in the various in the coming years, there's of course an opportunity to even use the EV charging car park in front of a commercial building as an additional means of controlling and saving and regulating the energy use in the building. Clearly, you then have the different use patterns in the building. Again, the weather forecasting, but also the amount of people that enter a building on a specific day. And that, of course, will help to also regulate the demand side sufficiently in order to have and come to hopefully a self-sufficient, energy-sufficient building in the future. So now let's look at how do we actually get to a smart building, and even that will become smarter going forward. And clearly, easy integration of smart building or smart automation, building automation equipment will become an important factor for this technology to have a bigger dominance in the future. You see here on the picture, basically, that a professional planner or system integrator will configure, hopefully online, a complete building automation system for a commercial building, online order that equipment will be sent to the site where professional installers will then install the equipment, again via a cloud-based system. You would be able to commission all the devices in the house, and once they're commissioned, those devices will actually start talking to each other, identifying each other, and the building becomes a smart building. A lot easier than compared to what today in many of the more sophisticated buildings needs to be done in order to move a building from a non-smart building to a smart building in the future. So now let's look at what personalization actually means for the smarter building. I already had some examples before on the smarter home, but I think it becomes really super exciting when you talk about the smarter buildings of the future. So face recognition is already something you have on your phone today, right? You can basically access your phone with face recognition, but clearly, opportunities that it would have for smarter buildings is tremendous. A person enters the building, gets greeted with their personal name because the camera has already detected who it is. Basically, from there on, the building knows that that person is entering, knows what kind of meetings that person will have on the day, on which floor the person works, also knows the preferences with respect to light, heating, for example, going forward. So all important information that personalization will be make it possible in the future. Move on into the building, walking to the elevator. I know there's sophisticated elevator solutions available today already, and they're becoming more and more sophisticated. But ultimately, not even having to choose the floor to where you need to go to, but the elevator knows already to which floor you will be going on that day, is an additional advantage. Coming into the office environment, here, of course, you see the person walking in. There will be routing lights navigating the person directly to the office or to the meeting room where the next meeting will take place. And again, the opportunity is there to support that with the help of smarter technologies. Now, let's take a look at well-being. There are many statistics available that the productivity of employees in an office environment can be dramatically improved by just making sure that the environment with respect to lighting, with respect to blinds, with respect to sunlight coming from the outside, with respect to temperature, with respect to oxygen, etc., will have a big impact on the productivity of the workers. So, together with a building automation system, combined potentially also with wearables that people have, where the heart rate gets measured, where realize when people are getting more tired in the afternoon, maybe the oxygen needs to go up, or it needs to be a little bit cooler in the room. All of these things are possible in the future when looking at the future possibility for well-being in the building. So having said that, of course, there will be a learning. And the interesting part about this is here that, if you run through a cycle in the building and you do this for a couple of weeks and months, you clearly get a pattern of how that building is being used. And in a learning building, coming back to my point about artificial intelligence, that learning building will then, of course, also help to further improve the processes in that building going forward. And last but not least, in case of an emergency, I think that's a really important and nice feature that will be coming on top in the future, that the emergency lighting systems and emergency control systems that are there can be easily combined with a building automation system. And clearly, when there is a hazard in the building, you have 5 exits where you have to go out to. It would be nice to know which one is the best exit to choose based on the hazard that is available in that building. And with more sophisticated solutions there, this will be possible in the future. So now let's move away from how the building is being used internally, and let's more look at the possibility for maintenance in the future. I think you all know, and it's being used since decades, in the factory environment, predictive maintenance is really, really important. But clearly, with the communication costs coming down for sensors, it will be possible to actually have sensors equipped to the critical equipment in a smart commercial building. What will that do? First of all, it's known that predictive maintenance is about 3 to 9 times cheaper than reactive maintenance in the future. So therefore, having the information ahead, knowing when critical infrastructure in the building might fail is a big advantage, because obviously people can react to it much earlier. Also, for the maintenance department, does not necessarily need to sit in the same building, can be actually somewhere else and just get navigated to the building whenever there is a failure, an error that gets detected by one of the sensors. So clearly, the technologies that will come here are really helping to maintain and sustain the building in the longer term. And again, with artificial intelligence combined, there will be a learning, because once these technologies are got rolled out, the learning part of the building will actually help to further improve the design of buildings in the future. Coming to even one step further in terms of how new buildings then get completely designed, and clearly the building information modeling is gaining widely success in the construction industry. In combination with artificial intelligence, that's a real powerful tool. Just imagine you have all the data of the building today available, but you also then not just have the data of the building that you construct available, but also the data of buildings that have been constructed in the past, that have had those features implemented that I've just mentioned in the last couple of slides. So that means those learning curves, those learning cycles in terms of how buildings are actually being used and what the best possible ways in terms of improving productivity, improving well-being in the buildings can be used in the design of new buildings, which you see down there, but also, in fact, in the design of new cities. And that's why when I come back to the beginning of my presentation, was talking, it's important to actually look at a holistic ecosystem of homes, of smarter buildings, of mobility, and ultimately also on smarter cities, because there is a lot of opportunity that these technologies will offer us in the future to optimize those. With that, I would like to come to my conclusion. So I've talked a bit about the megatrends that are impacting the industry going forward. And clearly, you know, urbanization, digitalization, and also the changes to flexible demand and flexible supply that we see play a major role and will have a major impact in terms of how buildings and how home and how mobility will be generated in the future. The expectations are pretty much the same. They have a different emphasis. I said more energy efficiency, maybe on a smart building, more productivity in a smarter building, probably a little bit more comfort on the home. But clearly, those that you see there with control, security, flexibility, efficiency, and comfort are important drivers, important use cases that are relevant to the home as well as to the building. The other aspect I would say in this context is, and that's why I asked the question right at the beginning, you know, who's actually living today in a smarter home, who's working in a smarter building. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but clearly, you know, when I go to an office, I expect certain things in an office to be there that I've already gotten to know in the last couple of years at home, and vice versa. You know, because the technologies that are being used in terms of smarter technologies, clearly, you know, there is a convergence between what a home looks like and what a smarter building or commercial office building look like in the future because of the expectations that have been raised in there. That's the reason why we as ABB are taking this very holistic look on the whole ecosystem, and why we're also pioneering in innovation going forward in this space, which we find is a very, very important space for the future and hopefully very relevant to all of you here. With that, I would like to thank you very, very much for your attention. It was great to be here, and obviously I would have still 8 minutes left for any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.